Charli is a queen of pop this year because maybe not
Sabrina Carpenter.
Maybe not the biggest numbers, but I think what she did doesn't sound like anybody else.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
I think the other people we named, even from Chappell Roan, Sabrina Carpenter, even Taylor Swift, they're all regurgitating something that we've seen before in the pop space, especially. Who can we mention doing what Charli's done? Like, she's even kind of outdoing her own self of her past hits.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, and how that album fits into the context of that artist's career. For everyone watching on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to us, and of course, leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather, and we're here with His Royal Highness, a.k.a. The Bunny, a.k.a. No Longer a Munch, a.k.a. The Champion. Okay, we still got our trophy here.
Yeah.
King Grant.
Welcome back, everybody. This time, we are tackling something everybody is looking forward to from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, our top 10s. Album Mode top 10, my top 10, Adriel's top 10. This is the point in the year everybody's dispensing their opinions. Everybody's like, oh, this is the best album of the year. This is the best rap album. This is the best blah, 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 blah. Fuck all that, okay? You're here on the Album Mode podcast, and you're hearing what we have to say about our top 10. And I would say this is the definitive top 10.
I would agree.
Because we are paying attention to a lot of genres. On my list, a lot of genres.
Yep.
Things that made the top 10, I didn't even, I was like, oh, that's it's a cool album. And then I came back and listened to everything. I'm like, actually, this is in the top 10. I've started considering this back, I think, even in June. Because we were starting to have like real conversations about which best albums were. And I kept like a booklet.
Yep.
A little, just like a couple of notes of a few things on it, a few albums on it. And then it started to get closer to like November, starting to get solidified. And then now it's December. And I have the list I am very comfortable with, if you can believe that.
Yeah, this was the hardest top 10 I've ever had to do for this podcast. Like, I thought I had this under control. I was like, okay, I got like my 12 that I like. And then I was okay, I got to knock a couple off. The 12 that I like was like 18 albums.
Damn.
And then it was like 21 albums that I felt like were all top 10 worthy. And this is one of those situations where in sports we talk about tiers. And maybe the tier, maybe from the 9th best player to the 21st best player. That's kind of how I feel about this. There's a lot of albums I feel like are in the same tier, but this list can only be 10. Okay, so there's albums on my list that are maybe just as good as albums that are not on my list. But that's kind of how the game goes, is there's only 10 spots. I'm not giving any ties. There's no 7A, 7B, only 10 on this list. I wanted to start this podcast with going through the best-selling albums of the year.
Okay.
Because we, most of the time, don't really talk about how successful an album is. Of course, we review it like as soon as it comes out. But we've had a habit of having albums on our list that have not been the best-selling albums of the year. And I want to see, is there any correlation between what's the best-selling and what we think is actually the best music? Now, of course, some of these albums are later on in the year, so that plays a part in this as well. But I want to go quickly from 10 to 1 because some of these albums actually are not even from this year. Number 10, Future Metro Boomin, We Don't Trust You. Number 9, Bryan. Number 8, Chappell Roan, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Number 7, SZA with SOS. Number 6, Morgan Wallen, Dangerous, the double album. Number 5, Billie Eilish, Hit Me Hard and Soft. Number 4, Noah Kahan, Stick Season. Number 3, Sabrina Carpenter, Short and Sweet. Number 2, Morgan Wallen, One Thing at a Time. And number 1, you guessed it, Taylor Swift, The Tortured Poets Department. Spoiler alert, not on my list.
That's not on my list. I forgot that even came out this year.
Not even in my honorable mentions. But that is kind of the clear example of those two things not coming together.
Yeah.
But she's made our top 10s before. If you're a fan of the Album Mode podcast, you can go back and listen. We've had her in our top 10 before.
Yeah.
But I wanted to mention that before we get into it. And then 2 more things before we get actually into the top 10. Country music had a big year. We probably reviewed more country music albums than we've ever reviewed on this podcast. Shabuzi, Luke Bryan, Post Malone, Beyonce as well. Yeah. So country music had a huge year. Of course, hip hop was the focus for a lot of reasons. But I want to give country music a shout out for having a huge year just in popular music in general.
Yeah, to cross over to us, because we're not really huge on country, but for it to get here and we're like, yo, we're reviewing country music purposefully.
Yeah, like it felt like every couple of months we had a country album that was significant that we had to review, and even some that were good that didn't even make our list.
True.
And then as well, Future. He dropped 3 albums this year. That's kind of uncommon thing in any genre to drop 3 albums in 1 year. He had We Don't Trust You in March, and then he had We Still Don't Trust You in April, and then mixtape Pluto in September. I'm not gonna spoil the list for anyone, but what do you think is actually the best out of those projects? When this year is over, when we go on to 2025, 2026, what will be the album from this year that people will remember?
I think it's We Don't Trust You, because like that, the thing that just basically sparked the musical year was on that album. When that song Like That came out, Kendrick Lamar did a verse, just a small verse.
Yeah.
Just a small verse,
A little ditty.
Yeah, just a quick
too soon.
A quick 32. Just a quick 32 for his buddies.
Yeah.
And the basic that was the musical new year. That's basically how I view it. That album came out, and it basically redefined how we were talking about music for the entire year.
Yes.
It set the complete narrative for popular music. Kendrick Lamar versus Drake versus Future versus Metro. The moments, everything stems from a singular song and a singular album, and I think that is going to be the long-lasting album for Future this year.
Yeah, going into 2025, I think March, at the end of March of 2024, will be kind of the start. We're talking about before and after. That's the moment. So if you're wondering, March 2024, that's when everything changed. I want to start at number 10. This is the album we both rated highly, and so highly, I can't believe it's at number 10, but this is how crazy my list got, okay? Number 10, Lucky Daye, Algorithm. This came out in June. You gave it an 8.5. I gave it a 9.
Yeah.
I went back and listened to this, and I was like, okay, this has to be in my top 10. When I listened to it again and went back, I'm like, okay, this might be my top 5. Here we are. It's not in my top 5, but one of the best albums of the year. I think this one could rank higher on a lot of people's lists for sure. And something you mentioned on the podcast has always stuck with me, of comparing him to Frank Ocean, which I didn't think about before. But I thought about that with this project in particular, because if Frank Ocean had put this project out, this would be a classic to a lot of people.
Yeah, it would be.
And I think that that's kind of the part of this where who he is as an artist, his persona, maybe is not grand enough for this album to get the just due it deserves. But to me, one of the best albums of the year.
Yeah, I would agree. This is actually number 6 for me.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy how when it came out, I remember you even saying, this is going to be an album that's influential. People are going to be looking back on in multiple years. And now I'm higher. I'm higher than you on it. I got it number 6. I think that Lucky Daye definitely hit a spot in R&B that people are craving, right? Like I mentioned the Frank Ocean thing, where he kind of sounds like Frank Ocean, but Frank Ocean musically doesn't exist, right?
Yep. Who's Frank Ocean?
Right? So to be able to do something that sounds like somebody that we adore, and definitely have your own spin, your own element on it, from all the way from the album cover to songs like Hurricane, even songs like Think Different, lots of great tracks on it where I'm like, oh, this is him, but I could see the sprinkle of Frank Ocean. So I think that this is definitely one of the best albums of the year. Number 6, number 10 for you. I'm surprised number 10 for you. I actually thought you would have this way higher.
I'm surprised by myself. I think this list I told you was hard for me to make. And I felt like this was just one of those, I was like, no matter where it is on the list, it can't leave the list.
Right.
A lot of the songs I'm going to mention or albums I'm going to mention started on the list and didn't end up on the list. This one, there was no way it was getting off the list. What else do you have? What do you have at number 10?
Number 10. We were just talking about this album. Metro Boomin, Future, We Don't Trust You.
Yep.
I was higher on this album than you. I think I gave it an 8.5.
Yeah, you get 8.5. I gave it a 7.
Right. And I was like, this, again, it was a moment. Like, I don't really rate things highly because it's a moment, but I took into account, like, this is big. Like, I could tell from that moment, I'm like, that Kendrick Lamar verse, crazy. Like That Type Shit with Playboi Carti was a great song. Even songs like Ice Attack.
Yep.
There's really interesting songs on it. Probably the most consistent a future project has been in a very long time.
Facts.
In a very, very long time. So to be very consistent, have these crazy features that everybody was talking about. You know,
Mhm.
type shit was a thing.
Huge song, yeah, Cinderella as well.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Cinderella was also, so there was like real songs that came out of it.
Mhm.
Consistent Future, Metro Boomin is one of the best producers in hip hop history, and he was doing his big thing on that. So for me, number 10. Don't trust you.
That was number 8 for me. I feel like that had to be on here. Like when I went back and listened to it, I was like, and again, there's a lot of songs from that in my rotation, and that's kind of the part about these projects is you have maybe 3 or 4 songs in a certain playlist over and over again, but listening to the album in full is a different experience. This is one of those albums when I went back and listened in full, I said, okay, this is actually better listening to the whole thing as a full project than some of the singles. So that's number 8 for me. My number 9 we did not review, and this is probably the latest addition to my list at all.
Okay.
And this is the album that when it came out, I was running it back probably for like 2-3 weeks straight. And with a new album, that's pretty rare for me. I'm a oldies guy, if you guys know. Like I will listen to music from any era at any time. But that's Thames, Born in the Wild, coming out in June.
Yeah.
Ooh. What?
I just thought of an album that we didn't review that might have made my list. Continue, sorry.
Oh yeah, Thames was one of those. And I went back to listen to it in full, and I said, okay, I have good memories of this project, but am I just drinking the Kool-Aid because I have a huge crush on Thames? Nope. 100% valid. Went back and listened. And this could be higher. I think because it is almost like a few different subgenres at once on this project, that it kind of suffers from that in a sense, where it is like for a certain kind of ear. But I think easily this is, one of the best albums of the year for me. So Thames, Born in the Wild, that's my number 9.
Wow, I'm surprised, but you also reminded me of another album that I would include on my list that I'm actually gonna sub. I'm gonna make a sub. Yeah, I'm actually gonna make a
substitution. Okay, let's hear it.
But I do like the Thames album, not as much as you. I think that I feel like I've always been lower on Thames than just literally everyone else. I don't get it. Like
that's no one's perfect.
Yeah,
everyone has their flaws.
I wish I was as high on Thames as everybody else. I understand. I mean, I recognize her achievements, her brilliance. But I'm just not as high as everyone else. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you what my previous number 9 was, and it is now dropped to an honorable mention. I'm gonna tell you what my current number 9 is. So my previous number 9, literally up until this moment that you were mentioning Thames, and then I remembered an album that we didn't review that I want to include, was Fat Dog. Woof.
Wow, that's a good one.
That album is one of my favorite albums this year. I might even, you know what? I'm going to keep it at number 9. I'm going to keep it solid with everything that's happening here. Fat Dog, Woof. Okay? This is probably one of the funnest albums I've listened to all year. The production is so like crazy and enveloping, and it felt like being in a cartoon almost.
I can't believe you didn't have this on your list.
I did have this on my list. I did. I had something else that I actually got reminded of.
So you didn't have this?
I had Fat Dog Woof, number 9.
Okay.
I decided to keep it solid. I'm not changing it.
Okay. So what was the replacement that you're not taking?
Rema.
I knew you were going to say that. He's in my honorable mentions. Yes.
Rema. He is that album. I just I was that was a song, or there's a bunch of songs like Azaman, or even He Is was even a great song. Villain. Those are songs that I was bumping, just like, that was a summer album though.
Yeah.
That was a summer album. I was not playing it in the winter, and I think that's the difference, because it came out in July.
Yes.
So when I was like listening to it, I'm like, yeah, banging this in the summer, playing in the summer. As soon as the degrees crept below the 20s, I was like, okay, we're out.
Yeah.
I can't play it. I can't play it. Because it makes you want to dance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very summer.
But Fat Dog Wolf, it felt like you can enjoy that in a bed, in your bedroom, outside. Like, it was one of those. It almost felt like you're on like LSD, bro. It was crazy.
Yeah.
The production is so good. I think that there's even like an overarching kind of like narrative of being in the Fat Dog world, right? The Fat Dog actually coming out of the earth, right? But songs like Vigilante, that crazy very grandiose intro.
Yep.
The Clowns I really liked. I'm trying to think of other songs that I really... King of the Slugs, the chunky guitars of King of the Slugs. So there's a lot of really, really good songs. Also short, like 9 songs.
Yeah. And I would call it kind of loopy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like loopy in the fun way, where it's not like, okay, I don't know where this is going. It's like, I'm ready to go wherever this is going.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly how I felt. You just were along for the ride, and you didn't never want to get off the ride. It's like a carnival. Like, it's it's amazing, man. I love that album.
I like that you had that one in there. That's one that I liked a lot, but didn't make my list. Number 7, and I think now in my list is getting to ones where most of these are someone's number 1. Like
Okay.
the next 7 I have, I asked a bunch of people what their favorite albums were, kind of see what the people were thinking. Going forward, all of these were someone's number 1. Okay, so I know I'm disappointed someone with every single album I'm going to next. Number 7 for me, Charli XCX, BRAT. Another summer album. You were high on this. You gave this a 9. I gave it a 7.5. I feel like I was very judicious with my scores this year. Like I was very much 7.5. If I liked it a lot, but I wasn't sure at the time, because I went back and looked at the scores. A lot of 7.5s for albums I really, really liked.
Right.
You were letting it fly.
I really was.
Eights all across the board. But for me, I was really like, let me not give them that full 8 yet. But this album better once you keep listening to it. And even though it does give summer vibes for sure, it was a BRAT summer. It might have been a BRAT year.
I know, facts. It was a BRAT year. But I mean, BRAT escalated to a point where it was influencing the American political sphere. Kamala as BRAT was a thing.
Maybe that was her downfall.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe it was. Technically, Charli XCX is English. That was a foreign influence. But yeah, so Charli XCX's BRAT. I'm going to tell you something. It's higher up my list, much higher up my list. So I don't want to drop too much.
I'm not surprised. Again, all my next albums are someone's number 1. Okay. I know that for a fact.
Okay, I'll talk for a little bit more about that when we're further up on my list. So number 8, you're somehow ahead of me. Number 8 for me is Flo Milli's Fine Ho Stay.
Oh, I like that.
I think you know what the theme of my list is this year? The fun albums.
Yes.
I'm just like all the albums that were a ton of fun. Flo Milli is very tough, but her music overall is really fun. I think that she has been able to walk this line where she is both tough girl, but the music's still sounding engaging in a way that I always want to listen to it. I don't think that Flo Milli is somebody that is necessarily super intimidating, but she's willing to fight. Right. And I think that person is still somebody I want to be around, somebody I can hang out with. But if the chips are down, I know Flo Milli's got my back,
She not going to start it, but she going to end it.
Exactly.
That's how I put it. I think Flo Milli was a tough one for me to have not on my list. And I'll put her in the group with a bunch of the female MCs, Lotto and Glorilla. Tough omissions.
Yeah.
But women in rap had a huge year this year. Like, I think you're going to see it later on our list. There's someone who I think everyone's thinking of who's going to be close to the top of our list. But
I would say songs like Never Lose Me, obviously.
Yeah, huge.
Obviously huge. Songs like Edible with Gunna. I remember I even said the Gunna feature is good. Okay? So that's how deep in I am on this Flo Milli album, where I was like, yo, if you can bring out a good version of Gunna to me, you're doing something special.
Now, Flo Milli has hits on that, for sure.
So even her, even the song with Anicia.
Oh yeah, New Me.
Yeah, New Me. That one's where we were talking about like she sounded tough.
Yeah.
It's like very trap beat, very dark and menacing. The hook is great. So that was one of those songs where I was like, ooh, we're doing something special. Like there's something interesting really happening here.
No, she's popping her shit on that one. New Me actually made it into my gym playlist. So that is like when you know you've made it, because the gym playlist gets a lot of play. So yeah, I like that you had Flo Milli on your list. 6 for me, and again, I apologize for all the fans of this artist because I know you have them a lot higher. Doechii, number 6, Alligator Bites Never Heal.
She didn't make my list?
This is a review that I actually wasn't a part of. I was out of town for this one. You did this one solo. It came out in August, at the end of August on the 30th. You gave it an 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
This is one of those albums that every time I listen to it, I'm like, nah, she has one for this one. And this is kind of like, my analogy would be, when you're talking to someone new and you're dating someone new and your friends say, let me see them. And sometimes you go, let me find the right picture. But sometimes you feel confident you can just show them the whole Instagram.
Yeah, the whole Instagram.
That's this album. You can just show them the whole album. You ain't got to worry about a certain song to bring them in at a certain place. Show them the whole album and it will be fine. So that was an obvious one to me. So number 6 for me, Doechii, Alligator Bites Never Heal.
I'll even further your analogy. Is like, sometimes she, the person you're dating, she looks like somebody is like, it's like, oh, show me the Rihanna joint that you were talking about. And you're like, you're here, right here. You know what I mean? And I felt like the same thing was happening with Doechii with this album, where I felt like I said this during the review. Sometimes she resembled other people.
Yeah.
Which was a good thing because we're talking about Lauryn Hill, Nicki Minaj, the masters, right? But to me, it was like it's too much imitation, not enough like creative, creative exfoliation. Let's say, you know what I mean. So I think I like it a lot, but that element of the self-creativity, soul creativity was missing for me. That's why she didn't make the list.
I think what she has here, and I think maybe 2 more people on this list have this, but this is a very time where the album itself is actually more popular than any of the songs. And in 2024, that is like such a rarity where an artist puts out an album and everyone knows the album itself, but doesn't know all the songs. And like, she's definitely one of those artists where, yeah, we know some songs on the project, but the album itself is just almost bigger than her at this point. So I think like that's a rare thing in a good way. And for all the Doechii fans, 2025, we got an album coming.
Yeah. And if you're just like waiting, you're tantalized by that, check out the Tiny Desk. Her Tiny Desk is really good. Her Tiny Desk is really good. Okay. So, I remember. Now I know why you're ahead of me. It's because I said my number 6 early, which was Lucky Daye. My number 7, okay? This is going to surprise some people, I think. Zach Bryan, Great American Bar Scene. I love this album. And I'm not a country person. I mean, I grew up listening to country. Shout out to my grandfather, Pops. But I distanced myself from country for a while, and he pulled me back in. Songs like Boons. Boons is a track where I legit people would talk to me about they'd be like, what are your favorite albums this year? And I'm like, yo, Luke Bryan, this album is crazy. And they're like, oh, really? What song do you like?
Bryan.
Sorry, I said Luke Bryan. Zach Bryan, right? And people would be like, oh, really? What's your favorite song by him? Boons, immediately. I don't even have to think about it. I think that his ability to feel like isolation and like just there's like a tiredness that emanates from that song, and even the songs after it, like even the song way back after it has that tired and loneliness is amazing. I think that his storytelling is incredible. There was that song that I think it was American Nights, where he was telling a story about a woman like watching TV, and we're outside watching her watch TV.
Even Great American Bar Scene, the song itself.
Yeah, so there's a ton of amazing songwriting, the loneliness and the sadness and the kind of the forlornness. I bought it. I was in. I thought it was cool. I thought the elements of it were really interesting. So that's what it is for me. I think that's number 8. Zach Bryan, Great American Bar Scene. One of the best albums out. I'm saying that, guys. I'm saying that.
That was a hard one to keep off my list. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, that was one that when I went back to listen to it, I was like, is this really not gonna make my list?
Right.
And I think I was giving a lot of credit to albums that had range and did range well. And I think we're in this era where sometimes different can kind of substitute for good. Kendrick Lamar has this line where he says, don't mistake street nigga for real nigga. This feels kind of like that. It's like, okay, you took a step to the left, that means it's good.
Right.
Zach Bryan is not taking a step to the left in any way, shape, or form, but it's still very good, right in the center. So I think that's a good one to have on there. This is one that I don't think you have on your list. I can almost say for certain. I haven't seen this on as many lists as I feel like I should have seen it on, but this is one of my personal favorites of the year. Number 5, J. Cole, might delete later.
Oh.
Came out in April. You gave it a 6. I gave it a 9. This is an album that when I listen to it back more and more, I'm like, yeah, I wasn't wrong about this one. This album is still really good. I do think, there are a few albums on here where it's hard to separate their online presence or what's happening online from the album. And I thought about that with Lucky Daye, where someone told me that they can't listen to Lucky Daye properly because he's not paying child support. And that's just in their mind when they hear him. Okay. Not on my algorithm. I did not know that until today. But, someone like J. Cole is more prevalent online than Lucky Daye in terms of what people are saying about him.
Right.
So I think this is one of those albums where the noise kind of hurt the album, especially the timing of it. This came out after We Don't Trust You. You talked about what We Don't Trust You was. But the album itself, in a vacuum, objectively, still very good. So that's my number 5. J. Cole, might delete later.
Yeah, I would say that I've come back to it, especially when J. Cole was doing his Renaissance release, I would say. I would call it. where he was dropping all of his old albums. I was like, okay, let me listen to the new stuff again one more time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good.
It's good. It's good. I
think
agree.
it's cool. I think I don't love it. I don't love it top 5 like you.
Yeah, definitely.
I definitely don't love it top 5 like you, but to each their own. You've always been higher on J. Cole than me. I've been a J. Cole
hater.
Agnostic. Let's say. Maybe not agnostic or
hater.
I've been quizzical of J. Cole. I'm like, I'm not, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I get it. I get why somebody would have it on their list. My number 5. Okay. Now people are gonna. I know I'm gonna start hearing from people when it comes to my top 5 because it's getting a little squirrely. I mean, it's already been a little weird.
Yep.
But now number 5, I have Kendrick Lamar GNX. Number 5 only.
I have that at number 4, so we're kind of in the same range. We're in the same range here.
So number 5, Kendrick Lamar GNX. It's kind of hard to right now, even though it came out 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It's kind of hard to put into words how big of a deal this album is currently and is going to be going forwards, because obviously this is the album after Kendrick Lamar kind of took Drake, crammed him into a little ball, and then put a dynamite right next to him. Watch the dynamite
shot him into the garbage can yelling Kobe.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. He kind of killed him in the beef. But it was a really interesting way for him to go back to his roots. Right? Usually when we talk about rappers going back to their roots, we're talking about lyrically what they write down, or they're talking about their life and stuff like that. GNX was more about production-wise going back to the roots, where you have songs like Squabble Up, songs like even TV Off, Peekaboo, where it's this old hyphy, a little bit some of it had G-funk elements to it. Just this real West Coast hip hop all the way. Even a song like Reincarnated, where he was using, I would say, Tupac's flow, his cadence and rapping. So it was super West Coast. Songs like Peekaboo, I loved. I expressed that on our review, where I was the motif of just using Peekaboo over and over. The mustard element of TV Off, beat switches. I think the one thing we didn't talk about was Luther with SZA.
Yep.
His R&B. I mean, I that to me is a damn. He kind of took a brief.
It's a damn song.
Yeah, he kind of took a damn song and
100%.
repurposed it. But one of the best albums out. Not the catchiest, I would say. It's not it's not like BRAT, how catchy that BRAT is.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of great rapping, great motifs. It's a unique style. I just think that it's just really core to even what hip hop existed as today. Big deal, right? So it's a number 5 for me.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one I've seen on a lot of people's lists at the top, when it's it's only been out for 2 weeks. So I think that's kind of crazy to have it, at the top of your list when it's really only been out for 2 weeks. But this is my number 4. So I'm with you in this spot. You gave it an 8.5. I gave it a 7. I think you talked about it going back to his roots.
Yeah.
This might not even be that, because he's never been this West Coast in his production.
Yeah.
I re-listened to Overly Dedicated recently, just to kind of get a feel for it. And I'm like, yeah, he's never been this West Coast basically ever in his career. So he's taking the West Coast on the road next year. I'm very excited for that. That's going to be a kind of moment kind of all over the country.
Him and SZA.
And I think that this album kind of being rated so highly right away is a testament to what he's accomplished this year. So this is everything coming together. The year that was Kendrick Lamar, GNX. My number 3 is an album that we did not review.
Okay, wow.
And this feels like the second or third year in a row where I have an album in my top 3 that we did not review.
Yeah.
And I don't remember what we reviewed instead of this one, but I think I understand why we didn't get to this album, because everyone loves this artist. He's having a moment right now. But I do think it was a surprise for everyone how good the album was. We knew he was good, but did we know he was this good? And that's Leon Thomas with Mutt, coming out in September.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this was probably the most frequent answer for me if it was favorite album of the year.
Really?
Of anybody I asked, this was the most frequent answer. This to me made me rethink Lucky Daye's album. I thought Lucky Daye had it of best R&B album of the year, best soul album of the year. But Leon Thomas Mutt reminds me a little bit of Miguel's Kaleidoscope Dream, just in the way that it feels like a classic, almost just from the sonics of it, regardless of what's happening online. And it's cohesive with having a bunch of different sounds. And I think back to Kaleidoscope Dream and how Many Drinks and Adorn aren't the same sound, but Kaleidoscope Dream and Candles in the Sun aren't the same sound, but still somehow fit on the same album.
Yeah.
This album has that feel as well. So Leon Thomas, number 3 with Mutt.
Okay. That's a big track or big album. I love the track though, Mutt. I love that track.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good pick. Not on my list, but I respect it. Okay, so my number 4. You already mentioned this album. I was surprised you had it so low. Charli XCX, BRAT.
Yep.
I was huge on this. Let me take the victory lap one last time. I want to say back in March or even February where I was like, this Charli XCX album is going to be really interesting. I like the marketing. I like what's happening. I liked Crash. I'm on the Charli XCX wave. Some people were like, oh, really? Charli XCX? Why? I'm talking about you. Who was like, yeah, I guess, whatever. Sure, okay. And I was like, no, this is going to be important. Then it dropped, and I was like, this is a moment.
You were very right. I got to give you your flowers because you definitely called this one. And it's funny in a way. I feel like we're both vindicated because I remember on the review I said, I've known about Charli XCX since the Tumblr days. So I'm almost immune to how big of an artist she is. So when you mentioned the rollout and things that were going on that time, did not see any of that.
Right.
And her even being a big artist now, I don't see that when I see Charli XCX. Like when I see her on either a billboard or in an interview or online somewhere, I'm not looking at it like it's Sabrina Carpenter who's like a big pop star. This is the same Tumblr artist I was a fan of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And to see her have like almost another big moment, like I didn't see that coming for sure. So I got to give you your flowers. One of the best albums of the year for sure.
Yeah, I think that songs like 360, I like 365 better than 360.
Okay.
But I think 360, huge, massive song. I mean, Club Classics I loved as well. I think that she was a pop artist and then she was a hyper pop artist and then she figured the melding point where she's like, I'm just gonna make this crazy electronic music that's there's a tinge of hyper popness to it, but it's really an electronic album. Songs like Von Dutch, Talk.
Yeah,
I was one of the people where it's like less important words, more vibes, and I gave it a 9 out of 10. And then you talk to other people who were like live, breathe, and just like bleed BRAT, and they're like, oh yeah, her talking about being a mother is so important and like being in the club and past 30, blah blah blah. Like this is actually
it's like you're listening to this wrong.
I'm just like, sure, fine, whatever. We're on the same side for different reasons. I just thought that the vibes were immaculate. I thought the production style was incredible. Her voice of being able to like knowing how to use the auto tune was amazing. I think her the hooks are sugar, like sugar coated hooks. So I think that it was awesome. I was there, I was participating, and I called it early.
You called it before it came out.
Before it came out, I called it. So I just want everybody to know that. But yeah, BRAT, that's number 4 for me.
I feel like Charli is a queen of pop this year because maybe not
Sabrina Carpenter.
Maybe not the biggest numbers, but I think what she did doesn't sound like anybody else.
Yeah, that's
true. I think the other people we named, even from Chaperone, Sabrina Carpenter, even Taylor Swift, they're all regurgitating something that we've seen before in the pop space, especially. Who can we mention doing what Charli's done? Like, she's even kind of outdoing her own self of her past hits.
Yeah.
So I got to give her a credit because
this is her second peak too.
That's what I'm saying is like having a second peak and as well having the popularity kind of match the ingenuity of the actual music. Like, I think she, of anyone on our list, is the person who's actually matching that because we've had a lot of people, of course, Kendrick as well, but she's becoming hugely popular again, but the music is there to match.
Yeah.
So got to give her credit. This one, I'm surprised I don't have this at number 1, honestly. This is kind of like, a case of the re-listen.
Okay.
And if I didn't have a re-listen, this would be number 1 on my list. But the re-listen put this to number 2. This is The Last Dinner Party, Prelude to Ecstasy.
This is my number 2 as well. I love this album.
Okay, awesome. Came out in February. Why I like to have the dates in here is to see like, we have a lot of albums that came out in the summertime. That was a huge time for music of like how an album feels. We have a couple albums like the Kendrick one that came out 2 weeks ago. But this is, I think, the earliest album on any of our lists coming out in February. Lucky Daye was in June. So
This was our early. We were like, yo, this is album of the year contender when it came out.
Yeah, right away. February 2nd. Like, not much had happened yet. We both gave it a 9. I would say it still feels like a 9 to me. So this album is one that stands the time, throughout the whole entire year.
Yeah, because we're like, I remember in February, we were like, yo, this is an early album of the year contender already. And it was February. And for it to come to be December, and we're like, number 2.
Yep.
Right? That shows that it had a real staying power. Songwriting, fantastic. This is a rock album.
Yeah.
As you could, I want to give a pat on the back to us. Just like looking through the genres that we were talking about when it came to our favorite albums. This is a rock album. I had a rock album at number 9 and now at number 2.
Yeah.
Songs like what was Sinner? Oh my god,
Sinner is crack.
I love Sinner is one of my favorite songs of the year.
Same.
For them to be talking about like, being gay, right? But then also like having to battle with your religion about like, internally, mentally battling with that, but then still being like, I'm going to burn,
but I'm doing it anyways.
I'm doing it anyway.
Like, and having a song with that content in the lyrics be such a banger,
I know,
is the best part of it, because I don't know where we're gonna go and hear Sinner outside, but that's what I want to hear. Like, if you give me the aux, like you might hear Sinner. I know you think you're gonna hear something else, but Sinner is what you might hear. So I'm with you. Like, this album is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, even the Susie and the Banshee vibes. Remember, like Burn Alive, like Susie and the Banshee vibe. Like, they got real interesting shit happening to them. So this is our first album too.
Yeah.
So I'm way into this band. I will be tapping in. When are they coming to Canada?
They came to Toronto. We missed their show. But I will say this before we get into our end of the list or top of the list. Mm-hmm. They're an early candidate for the Album Mode Hall of Fame. Because starting off with a 9 like this, a top 2 album, like, think about that as, like, we talked about Lucky Daye when we first started, of him being a contender right away. He's in the bottom half of both of our lists.
Yeah.
For them to start with that and then end up right at the top of the list, basically.
Yeah, so, that's a big deal.
Yeah, big deal for them.
They're like Derrick Rose. They're like our Derrick Rose.
I hope not. I really hope not. Maybe more like a Luka Doncic.
Yeah, maybe.
But definitely, listen, killing it right away.
Yeah. Okay. So this is my number 3.
Mm-hmm.
We already talked about my number 2 last dinner party. That was our number 2. My number 3. This is Yeat, Lyfestyle.
Yep.
Okay. The Yeat verse was on fire this year.
Yeah.
If you're a person that liked rage music at all, Lyfestyle, for me, I mean, it was just like a top to bottom banger after banger. It was one of those albums where I would just put it on and just like listen to it all the way through, like multiple times. I'd be at work, listen to it all the way through. I'd be at the gym, listen to it all the way through. I'd be at home chilling, listen all the way through. I'd be playing, EAFC all the way through. Like, I would just be listening to it all the time. And that hasn't happened to me since Brent Faiyaz with Wasteland.
Yeah.
Where I would just listen to it just like all the time. Like, that was just like my soundtrack for the year.
Yeah.
But Lyfestyle was my soundtrack for the year. I gotta be honest with you, where I was listening to it all of the time. Songs like what was it? Orchestrate? Orchestrate basically is like, if you play a Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, there's a character, I think it's Q in it, where it has that like that sound is like very, very similar, and to even hear that in like a song, and for it to be like this hard hitting song versus
it's a banger.
Like, versus an electro song, I think that Yeat is definitely at the apex of combining electronic music and trap music right now. And Lyfestyle is great. I mean, Geek Time, where it's just like right, but it's still like he still figured out how to make them hard hitting tracks. That is that's number 3 for me, man. Lyfestyle is crazy.
Yeah, Lyfestyle, I actually give it a lower score than 2093 because obviously he had 2 releases. But I think this was Yeat's year in a lot of ways, kind of in his subgenre.
Yeah.
I think there's no way you could ignore what he did. And I think as well, having so many like bangers that are kind of different, because 2093 and Lyfestyle aren't the same album.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's not like, oh, he just put the outtakes out of the album, you know? No. And I think about it because, he's obviously been a Future disciple, but Future's also another artist who released multiple projects. If you look at each multiple projects and Future's multiple projects, he can kind of hang.
Yeah.
Like, he can kind of hang there. So I'm not mad at you having Yeat here. I thought you had 2093. up here, but I'm not mad at you having Lifestyle at your number 3. This is my number 1, and I'm not gonna lie to you. You can probably guess where I'm headed with this if you guys have talked to me at all in the past 12 months. But I surprised myself here because this is not where I thought I was headed when I started making this list. But after 2 re-listens, I said, let's just do it. Let's put this at number 1. Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips. Came out in March. We got Chris, the producer, giving us a nod of approval here. And this is one where I said at the time, you heard me, I said this is rap album of the year for me at the time. One of the best albums of the year. You gave it a 7, I gave it a 9.
Exactly.
And I think, listen to this album again, it's almost like the Lucky Daye thing where if this was someone other than Schoolboy Q, this album we talked about so differently.
Okay.
Still, people are saying it's rap album of the year. People are saying that forever online throughout the whole year, which I love that people are keeping that consistency.
Yeah.
But hearing this album again, I'm like, yeah, this is one of those situations where because of the kind of rapper he is, his voice, his content, people are not treating this album the respect it deserves. Of course, it's obviously still lauded. Like, it's still a great album. People are saying it's a really good album. But when I re-listened, I kind of was surprised myself of like, this is better than I remember. And I was already giving it a lot of praise. So Blue Lips for me is, I don't want to say an obvious number 1, but it's number 1 that I feel good about because there's so much on here musically that he's doing that it's like I've never heard him do before. 1, that's like, okay, did not know Q had this in his bag. And then 2, like I'm comparing him to his West Coast brother Kendrick. If Kendrick did some of these things that Q did musically, the internet would be losing their shit right now. And it's I think, again, Q's first time doing it. Again, it's still kind of more gangster rap than anything.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think like having gangster rap that has all these like musical elements is kind of odd for a lot of people and not giving the same respect. But I think if you take that part out of it, like this album, I felt like should have been talked about in the same breath as the Chromacopias or the Alligator Bites Never Heal. And to see that it's not kind of hurt my heart a little bit. Okay. But I'll do my part at putting it number 1. So my album of the year, Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips.
Okay. It's solid. I liked it. But everybody else around me loved it. And I felt like you with Kendrick Lamar. That's basically that's what
I don't know if that's the same.
That is the same.
I love Kendrick Lamar. I don't
not as much as we do though. But yeah, I think it was cool. I do like the motifs in it. I do like the use of blue. They're really going for the blue thing. So I thought Schoolboy Q, Blue Lips, I thought it was cool. Didn't make my top 10. But my number 1, if you know me and if you've been talking to me at all this year, I actually don't even need to say it out loud. And you already know what it is.
Say it.
Yeat 2093. This is Yeat at his apex. And I want to tell you why. Because we were talking about Lyfestyle. We were talking about Lyfestyle. We're like, oh, these trap bangers, so what? Like literally the song, so what? Like these crazy hooks and stuff like that. Then 2093, this came out before Lyfestyle, and this was a concept album, right? Everybody was like, oh, I don't really want to hear like, it's like iRobot, what's all these machines and stuff. I'm like, that's the point. That's the point. You guys were just not seeing the vision. But I saw the vision. Okay?
Yep.
I think that the distortion on a lot of these songs is really interesting because, again, it gave it that cybernetic element. It is hip-hop, but he is basically, and I said this on Lifestyle, where he is stretching it as far away from hip-hop as possible to still let it be hip-hop. But now we're like electronic music, electronic body music. Like, it's not even EDM. It's like, like this almost like synth. Like synth wave type shit, right? So I think that songs like More, You Should Know. I'm trying to even think of Team CEO, Psycho CEO at the very top.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's got these...
Breathe.
Yeah, Breathe, right? I'm not a big fan of Breathe. Everybody else likes Breathe way more than me.
I like Breathe.
But that shit doesn't sound like anybody else right now. This album, like, it doesn't sound like anybody else. It's got this element of like the production sounds so crazy. His deep voice, his ability to like change his voices and make it sound like he's doing all the alien sounding voices in the background. That's him. And then he has this deep ass voice that is speaking over the top of everything else. It's just otherworldly, right? Like it's just something that I didn't see anybody else doing. And I was like, people were looking at me like I was crazy. They're like, "Oh, you listen to you? Like this sucks." I'm like, "What? I thought we valued creativity in music. I thought we valued world building in music. I thought we valued cross genre things in music, right? So I see it. Yeat has number 1 and number 3 on my list. I think he is the best hip hop artist out right now, without question.
I think you're drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit too much, but Yeat is what I mentioned at the top of this podcast, where there's a part of music right now where it's like different is good. And I think that's what Yeat is a big part of. That he's so different that just being that different almost equals good to some people. Some people it doesn't, and some people don't like different. But I think he is of that category where, you know, different equals good for what he does. So I have no problem you having Yeat at number 1, number 3, of course. In the comments, let us know. I feel like they have something to say about Yeat being number 1 and number 3. But I think it's interesting that we both had a different number 1 that's not on each other's list at all.
Yeah.
So I think that says a lot about how different we are, even though there is some groupthink of us having a lot of similar albums on here, but still like 2 completely different number 1s.
Yeah, I remember saying this a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, where I'm like, I feel like you and I are now diverging.
Yes.
I think that we at the beginning when we first were reviewing stuff, I felt like we were much more similar. Scores were similar. There was more of like, even when we determined which album we're reviewing, it was much more like consensus, right?
Yes, yes.
Now we're like, there's a little bit, I would say, slight disputes over what we should be reviewing.
Yes.
I would say there's a little fraying when it comes to what we think is good.
Yes.
And who we think is like doing the best stuff right now, which is indicative of actually what music is like right now.
Yes.
I think people are dispersing in a way where before it's like everybody listened to Britney Spears, everybody listened to Justin Timberlake, everybody listens to Drake, right? Now we're getting to a point where you're listening to Blue Lips all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I have not listened to it since we done that review.
Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. Must have been a rough year.
So I think there's a divergence happening, which is good because we're seeing a variance of opinion, and I'm getting that in real life too. There's people who I've sent multiple Yeat songs to. They're like, bro, stop.
I'm not surprised.
Please stop.
Yeah, I think Yeat is one of those guys, and I'm so invested in him because I do think he's really talented.
Yeah.
But I'm like, when will people know that he's really talented?
Okay.
Like, will it take 8 albums before that's kind of like clear and evident to everyone? Because right now he's in that space where the people who see he's different think he's good, and some people don't think that the different is good.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to see where he goes from here. I want to go through my honorable mentions because this group of albums all were like in consideration. 2093 was actually on my like long list at first. Yeah, it actually had a chance of making it. It didn't, of course, but it was on the long list. The Auditorium, Volume 1, Common and Pete Rock. An album not talked about enough because I think that people just see the names Common and Pete Rock and are like,
I'm good.
Old heads, yeah. and not gonna lie, I had a bit of that as well. I'm a huge Common fan. Heard the project and I was like, nah, this is fire. But it is a different type of music than 2093 for sure. Wylod, Anderson .Paak, No Worries.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was good.
That had a shot at making it on my list as well. Beyonce, Cowboy Carter.
Yeah, that's on my honorable mention.
Better than I remembered when I listened back to it. Not good enough to make the list, of course.
Yeah.
And that is one of those albums I've seen on a lot of people's top 5, top 10s from different publications that I'm like, you lost me.
It's a little bit on the hype because it's Beyonce. It's a little bit on the hype.
And we mentioned it actually during her review, but I think all of her albums since Lemonade have actually been getting worse. And they just been different. We talk about Renaissance, this album. And I think like no one's saying that because like it's Beyonce, you're not allowed to say that.
Ooh, that's a scorching hot take. You don't even know that one.
But I think that's been clear of like these albums are not better than her like past work. Yeah. But we're treating them as if they are because they're different.
Yeah, I do think it's like Beyonce, she's trying different genres. So I do think she's getting a little bit of like a +1 or a +0.5 from everybody. It's like, oh, it's different, but also good. So it must be excellent. But it can be different, good, and good.
And mid, yeah. And I think what I've learned from this top 10 that we have is we are in a space where different is not the norm. I think like that's been said a lot online of people making the comment of back in my day, everyone was an individual. That seems to be the case. I think that's clearly the case if when we're looking at it of the actual albums that we have at the top of our list and like who we have, where we have them. Saw Baby, Saheem, that one was better on the re-listen. Yeah. All you Saw Baby fans, I apologize. From the bottom of my heart, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. Okay? I apologize. I had a lot of heat for Saw Baby, not the good kind of heat. So I personally apologize.
I also want to just a small aside say that Adriel did talk me down because I was going to give that a 7, and then we were in conversation. I was like, maybe it's a 6.5, but I'm coming back and telling you guys I'm giving it a 7 retroactively.
It's too late. It's too late. Billie Eilish hit me hard and soft.
Wow, you're really going deep on this list.
Better on the re-listen.
Okay.
I think Billie Eilish is kind of in that Charli XCX mode for me, where it's like her being a big star is not computing in my brain still.
Right.
I'm still thinking of like SoundCloud Billie Eilish from when I first got into her. So better on the next listen. Clairo, Charm. Not my favorite version of Clairo, but I actually like the album as a whole. I think it's better than some of the songs individually. But a lot of people are fans of that project a lot.
I like that. That is the best one since the EP. I would say. That's to me. I don't know. So other people liked. What was the one? What was her first? I can't even remember the debut album. Okay.
But this is a lot of people's favorite from her, so that's surprising. And this last honorable mention was actually my number 10, and it got a strong cross out.
Okay.
For Lucky Daye was MKG 2-Star The Dream Police. I forgot that he even existed for like years. And I did an interview with an artist, and at the end of most of my interviews, when I talk to artists for a story, I just kind of ask them, like, what are you listening to right now? What's going on in your world? Like, what do you listen to right now? And this artist brought up MKG, and I literally forgot they existed. And I was like, whoa. And went back and listened to the album, and I was like, okay, I understand why everyone loves this album so much, because on Reddit, they've been talking about it a lot. So didn't make my top 10, but honorable mention for me.
Okay. I like that. MKG, shout out to them. I would say on my honorable mentions, I only have a handful here. Beyonce, Cowboy Carter, we already talked about it, so we don't need to go there. I had Doechii's Alligator Bites, Never Heal. We talked about that, so we don't need to go any deeper. 2 that I had, one that I know is going to be on everybody's top 10, but didn't really make ours was Magdalena Bay? It's Imaginal Disc.
Yeah.
I did listen to it when it came out and everybody was talking like this is the hottest shit since sliced bread. I was like, it's more like I don't know, like a baguette, not sliced bread. You know what I mean? Like I think it was I thought it was cool. I didn't think that it was like mind blowing the way a lot of people did. But I thought it was awesome. I thought that, the electronic, I love electronic music.
Yeah.
On the lows. I'm a big time electronic fan. So I thought that was cool. And then my last one, Cindy Lee, Diamond Jubilee.
My God, I forgot about Cindy Lee.
Everybody's asleep. I feel like everybody's asleep when it comes to
that could have been in my top 10.
Right? So I think that I am like the only person that like when it came out, it was like Critical Darling. And then I think everybody just fell asleep. But I'm awake, okay? I thought that this was one of the best albums this year. Honorable mention. Too fucking long. I think that's the only thing that was damaging for me when it came to its score or anything like that. I'm like, yo, this shit's like 2 hours long?
But you know what's crazy? It might be a no skips. Like
Facts.
That's like a 2 hour no skips like never happens.
Facts. That is a big fact.
And like maybe it's in its own category, but it might be a no skips.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, before we get out of here, we have no repeat artists, at least on my top 10. I'm gonna go through some of the artists that we had last year on our top 10 just to show everyone how music has changed.
Yeah.
But Andre 3000 was on mine for New Blue Sun. Kate Tremine, Burna Boy, Arlo Parks, Cleo Soul, Sampha, which is basically our album of the year. Brent Faiyad, Larger Than Life, and then Kali Uchis, Red Moon and Venus. Just a different sound from music.
Yeah,
compared to last year.
That's much smoother last year.
That's what I wanted to highlight is like, I think like albums like BRAT, 2093, even Blue Lips, even GNX. This year is more abrasive.
Yeah.
Like this year is about violence. Last year was a lot more smooth.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to see what 2025 has in store. In the comments, let us know, what album are you looking forward to? Of course, we had Smino just come out. Sorry, Smino.
Yeah, sorry.
We
love Smino. We reviewed Smino, I think, twice.
Yeah, I feel like Smino is a usual guy to make the list. But it's just you can't come out like 2 days before and make the list. But let us know in the comments, what albums are you guys looking forward to in 2025? What album did we miss? Is there an album we didn't even mention at all? I know Shabuzi's album we didn't really mention. A lot of people like that. Big X The Plug's album. People really like that. Post Malone's project, we did not like it, but a lot of people loved it. So let us know in the comments what albums you guys really liked. Follow us on the interwebs at Album Mode Pod, on Twitter at Album Mode Pod, on Instagram at Album Mode Pod, on TikTok. All the podcast listeners, leave us a rating and a review, 5 stars, not a single star less. And of course, until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.